Welcome to the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast. I'm so excited today to be in the studio, quote studio, with Tia Turnipseed, one of the coolest names I've heard in a while, and Elizabeth West, who also has a really cool name now that I said it all together like that. And it's going to be a great time here in just a few minutes talking about worship leaders as tour guides. And so we'll jump in here in just a moment.
My name is Ava Andrews, and like you, I serve in local church worship ministry. It's a joy to sing, worship, and help lead in the church, and that's why we're so passionate about the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast. Each episode is an opportunity to focus on practical aspects of local church ministry. We're glad you've joined us today. We're praying for you, and for now, let's jump into today's episode.
Okay, welcome into the Worship Leader Toolbox podcast today. My name is Tim Price, and I'm here with Elizabeth West, who is kind of joining in. Well, not new as far as Harvest goes, but as far as the podcast and internship stuff, you've just begun the last 2 weeks, September 1st.
Yep.
So technically you're not supposed to date podcasts, but we just did. So I'm glad that you're here. And it's going to be an awesome year of an internship. And so I'm glad you're in here, and you're welcome to jump in as much as you would like, or as much as you don't want to do. It's fine too. I'm just glad you get to listen in today. And then also here today with Tia Turnipseed.
Yeah.
And we're going to introduce you and share a little bit about what you were talking about. Tia was a part of the digital worship conference last year, Awakening Worship Conference, when we basically did everything by remote video during the height of the pandemic. And we are in some ways still in that mode, but glad you're here today. And just take a minute to introduce yourself and tell us what church you're a part of and your role and all that.
Hi, I'm Tia Turnipseed. I'm actually a worship minister from Highland, Illinois. I go to Restore Christian Church. We're a church plant. We actually are about to celebrate our 2-year service. So we're getting into toddlerhood, which is nice. We're out of being a baby, which is good. So
Church toddlerhood,
yeah.
So when will the 2-year mark be?
Technically, it's October 20th, but this year, October 20th, I think, is like a Wednesday. So I think we're going to celebrate it like the 17th, October 17th. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's exciting. It's exciting.
On last Sunday, we just led worship, a few of us, for another church in Edwardsville that had a 2-year celebration. Like these 2 years of pandemic church planting has probably been like most ups and downs of anything.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we started October 20th of 2019, and then the pandemic hit like February 2020.
Yeah.
So
that's really, it's like starting a church 3 times is the way this other guy described it.
Yeah.
Like continually doing it. So where do you all meet?
We currently meet at the Weinheimer Community Center in Highland, Illinois. It's a really nice facility. It serves us really well. It's just old. It's an old building.
My daughters have been there on multiple occasions for homeschool groups.
Oh, yeah.
Highland homeschool group.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
They do a lot of that. They're
painting a mural on the side of the front of it now, which I think is really exciting. I'm hoping that like more people will have like more foot traffic in it. It's going to look really pretty. I'm very much a stereotypical girl of like I like things to look aesthetically pleasing. So the inside is not aesthetically pleasing, so at least the outside will start to look really nice. So
the mural's on the outside.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
The mural's on the outside.
I was wondering what world wall it'd be, because that's not many walls in there. It's bleachers or stage or
pretty much
basketball.
Yeah, it's on the outside.
So we can cut this out if you don't have a good answer, but have you ever heard anybody else with the last name of Turnipseed besides your family?
Yeah, there is or was a Troy Turnipseed who something like dean of students or academic something at SLU, actually, but I don't believe I'm related to him. I mean, I'm sure that I am related to him somehow, but like not closely. But it's ironic because I really do have an Uncle Troy Turnipseed, but they're not the same person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's more Turnipseeds out there than you think, but I do have a Turnipseed fun fact. Again, you can cut this out. So you guys know that like James Dean, I believe his name, like died in a car crash.
Mm-hmm.
The person who was driving the other car that he collided with, his name was Charles Turnipseed.
Wow.
Yeah. So probably also related to him, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really a good thing for me, but I'm just helping people know turnip seeds are out there.
So your first name is Tia, or is that short for something?
Nope. Full name is just Tia. Tia.
Tia Turnipseed.
Yeah. My mom wanted to give me a short name because Turnipseed was so long.
Wow.
She tried. Yeah. But another fun fact. So my mom and my dad's initials both were TAT, like once they got married. So I had to be also a TAT. So who knows what my name could have been had they not just been limited to T names.
So what's your middle name then?
Ashley.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. I was either going to be Taylor Ann or Tia Ashley.
Taylor Turnipseed has a nice ring to it too.
I have a cousin named Taylor Turnipseed.
Oh, okay.
We have a lot of T's.
A lot of T's.
If a T name exists, it's probably in my family.
That's cool. All right. So what's your middle name, Elizabeth?
Lynn Ann.
Oh, is it 2 words?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Elizabeth Lynn Ann West?
Yes.
Wow. Maybe your last name was so short they wanted to give you a bunch of long things.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we got connected last year, and I'm so glad you got a chance to come here today. And this doesn't have to be a everything we know podcast. This is kind of going to be centered on a couple quick things. And one is just the conversation we had about worship leaders being a tour guide. And I thought that was so fitting and unique and cool. And what were you thinking about when you originally mentioned that? Kind of what was just your thought process about tour guide?
Yeah. So the idea of like being a tour guide is something I feel like I've been kind of chewing on for a while. I mean, it has so many different layers to it, but of course, it's this idea of, okay, if everyone gets on a plane and you fly to Europe and you're going to go see all the greatest sights that you've probably never seen. But if you spend the whole time really just like oohing and awing over the plane ride, and not any of the sights that you came to see, it's like, what was the point of you getting on the plane and going to Europe in the first place? If you really just wanted to see the plane, that's not really the point of it. And so this idea of, as the worship leader, you're here to take everyone on this plane. Ironically, like that would be yourself, like, hey, like come on with me, like we're gonna go and we're gonna see all these sights. But if they only just stop and see you, if they're only paying attention to how pretty you sound or how amazing you play something, or if you're just stopping people to where they only look at you, how good of a tour guide are you really? The tour guide of the group is the one who knows all the interesting facts, right? They know all the insider scoops to take you to, and they've been there before. So they're not going to get like stopped or like stumped by this like beautiful sight. Like they obviously think it's beautiful too, but they know to keep going of like, oh, you thought that was good. Like I'm going to take you around here and I'm going to take you to the coolest place that's here. And this idea of, you're here to service them. Like you're on this trip with them, but you're here to take the back seat. People, when you go on a tour guide, when you're on a tour, you remember the sights. You don't probably typically remember your tour guide all that much. And I think that's the point of a worship leader is you're supposed to, hey, everyone, like, we're here to do this today. And then at some point you disappear because they're going to be oohing and ahhing at the sites that you took them to. And, like, that's, I think, the whole point of being a worship leader.
Wow, that is, like, a lot of great stuff. And one thing you just mentioned, they remember the site. That's the goal.
Yeah.
They may remember you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you when they do remember you is when you're not that great.
Right. Yeah.
So like when you're like a hindrance in a sense, like who cares? You can come look at this if you want. I mean, like if there's no energy and no enthusiasm, that's just one little thought.
Yeah.
The other thought is a tour guide really is a servant. Like you're not like the main attraction.
No.
You're this, holding the door open type person.
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. It reminds me of the time that I got on a plane and went to Hawaii with our youth group. And I got home, my parents, this is back in the days when there was no digital stuff, but I got home and developed all the film. And they were so aggravated because most of my pictures were from the bus ride and the plane ride to Hawaii. Like all these kids eating like, chicken and biscuit crackers and Dr. Pepper and like no ocean whatsoever. It was just terrible.
No ocean. No volcanoes.
So that's, if somebody does stop there, and I know we could like turn a lot of corners here and go deeper, but some people get stuck just in the vehicle to worshiping God. Like they're just stuck there their whole lives sometimes even. Yeah. You're just in a church that's got like, you're not passionate about it or whatever the case will be.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of one of my biggest fears as a worship leader. I feel like I have to keep that in check a lot of, I don't want to get stuck in the vehicle in this process. I don't want to make it all about me. And I think for me, like as a worship leader, I find that I get really bothered by my own humanity, right? Like I think as a worship leader, you're chosen for this such holy task, right? Like worship is such an intimate, holy moment. And it's such a privilege that we get to go into the Holy of Holies at this point. So you think of it, it's like such a sacred moment. So you think it's going to take like the most sacred people to take you there. But I know myself and I'm like, I'm not as holy as I want to be because I'm sitting here being like, oh, well, no one, complimented me and how I sang today. Or, those just normal moments that like, that's just you being a person. Like you're just human. Like it doesn't mean that you've destroyed the moment, but you just have to keep it in check. And so, yeah, I just feel like I struggle a lot with that push and pull of I want to be here to serve other people, but I'm also human. And sometimes you're like, oh, sometimes it's like, oh man, yeah, you're always a servant. You're never the main attraction, which is fine. We're not built to be the main attraction. We literally wouldn't be able to survive if that was the point, if we tried to take that for ourselves. But yeah, I find that sometimes, you get in your head if you're not careful, that people are, oh, like I love the sermon today, or oh, that was so good, that was my favorite part, and like no one ever talks about you, and you're like, oh man, and then you're like, but wait, that was the point. Like I was a tour guide, I wasn't supposed to be the main attraction.
Like it's fine if they don't remember my name. Like in fact, can worship leaders really make a name for themselves?
Yeah.
Like how can that is like a
it's like that weird tension.
On the other hand, as a worship leader, it doesn't want to make you go up to other worship leaders and say, awesome. you really did this well. I mean, like,
I know.
And sometimes you could tell when somebody's led worship before because they kind of talk that talk. Like, wow, I could tell that blah, 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 and you did this. And you could just kind of, know that they're talking about it. And the hardest part of that sometimes is just like really enthusiastically saying thank you. Because most often we start saying things like, yeah, it was a weird day. I couldn't get that. I mean, our back screen broke. I mean, it's like we always have like a,
but
like we say something about it to negate the fact that even in our weakness, great things happen.
I think like the hardest thing anyone can do is like just to learn the I don't know, gift or the trait, or just to learn just to say thank you and just stop it there. I actually, my undergraduate, I was a theater major. And I studied vocal performance as well. And we like read this whole like book about like just the art of saying thank you and just accepting what people have to say. If like if people just come up to you and tell you whatever and you're like, oh no, I wasn't good, or oh no, whatever, like you're actually like disrespecting like their feelings, like their opinion. So you're like, even though it feels so weird to be like, thank you so much, but it's really the best thing you can do.
It's for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to have a guy that always run around. You'd say thank you. He'd say no, thank you. I'd be like, what? I knew what he was saying, but he was such a
He's
goofball.
one of those. Yeah. No, thank you.
Well, I don't know if Elizabeth have talked about this, but there's times when we're a certain age demographic of camps where they want your autograph, and we've experienced it at the kids conferences. So like the 4th and the 5th graders, that age group, they want your autograph if you're in the band, and talk about like encouraging. And sometimes I think, that like Jesus says the kingdom of God belongs to the kids, like their inhibition just to say, oh, you guys are awesome and want your autograph. That kind of like goes away as you get into adulthood, unless it's somebody just ridiculous, super famous. And that's fine because there's not time to do it every single week or anything. But it's weird to accept that and just say, yeah, thank you for asking me to give you our autograph. I mean, like this is like, it's like this little time between you and them. And we probably signed Peoria last year. We probably signed 250 little cards like all day long. It was hilarious.
That's so cute though.
We kind of brought up on ourselves though, because we actually printed baseball card type things of all of us with our favorite scripture verses and ice cream and all that type of stuff, just so they get to know us. And then we didn't realize it was going to be like collector item day. Like they had to get all 6 of them all signed.
That's so sweet though. It's like meeting them where they're at. That's such a good idea.
Yeah, it was awesome. So what about the idea of preparing to lead? You mentioned a lot in that first analogy, which has been, I think people will grab a hold of that and it'd be helpful. But, if you're going to get on a plane and go to Europe and visit sites.
Right. You gotta plan it out. I think that I've heard a lot of people kind of compare like spontaneity, like, or spontaneous worship. It's different big name churches, I think, go about their worship differently. And some people just entirely, it's spontaneous. They don't really plan. It's just, they're making things up as they go. And obviously like that works for them. And, the Lord, I think, can be worshiped in any way that we show up, because he's a lot better at it than we are, but I feel like preparation is part of your worship, especially as a worship leader, especially if a team of people, like, you're not just, in charge of leading that congregation onto that tour, but you're leading the people that are doing it with you as well. Like, there's a whole band with you. There's other singers, there's other people. And I think you just need to prepare, for them. Like, we use Planning Center, obviously, and we use tracks. And so I have set lists uploaded with just the tracks, no vocalizations in it for people to rehearse with. You get that to them super early, but also just preparing your heart too. Like, there's a whole different side of it. I think just spending time with the Lord alone, privately, I think is the best way you can prepare, because like we were saying earlier, that being a worship leader, being a tour guide, is just being a servant. So Sunday morning or whatever, Wednesday night, whatever you're coming to do, like, that's not for you. It's for everyone else. Like, you're there to serve other people. You're facilitating. You're there just to point out, like, hey, he's over here, So you've got to come in already full in order to be able to do that.
That really is true. I heard Paul Balash one time say that you worship the Lord in private, and then whenever you are in corporate worship, you really are, like, you're using like the tools you have to make something happen.
Yeah.
And he said it's more like you picked up your instrument and your brown bag lunch and you went to church. Like, you're you're on the job, kind of, even though it feels funky to call it that, but you're really there to help the church accomplish something. And your team needs you to do that too. Yeah. Because
they're looking at you too.
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, it'd be total chaos. And even the churches that come off being really spontaneous, have obviously done a lot of preparation to have such a spot. It's almost like the more spontaneous you want it to be, the more preparation you really need to do. Otherwise, you have you don't have the chemistry and the mechanics to even pull off something that's not rehearsed. Mm-hmm. And so that's like a totally different thing. Yeah,
you got to trust the other people on the stage to do that too, with spontaneity.
Do you have the same group every week, or is it different people rotating in and out? Or?
It's a rotation. I definitely have mainly the same instruments each week, musicians. They'll get rotated a little bit just because I don't have as many, to rotate for that. But vocals rotate every week. Kind of give people time to grow in their own skill and their craft. I think that too is being a worship leader. It's you're essentially leading two different groups of people. Right, you have like your team that you're leading, and you have like the congregation that you're leading. So right now we don't have any other service outside of Sunday morning, so there's not a lot of other places for people on my team that I know have a desire to lead, but maybe don't entirely feel comfortable yet. So kind of like, okay, like, we'll give you a verse, we'll give you, you can take the chorus, or, so it's just kind of like working with them and kind of figuring out who's meant for what thing. Just because you're on the worship team doesn't necessarily mean that you kind of carry a worship anointing, kind of figuring out who's here for which purpose, but like asking them too, like, hey, like, what do you see for yourself? Like, is this something that you think this is a calling, or is it something that you just enjoy getting to do on Sunday? Both are perfectly fine and are welcome on the team, but some people, I think, just you're there to serve in a different capacity. So checking in with them too.
Yeah. And that's a whole another podcast.
That's a whole other
about
thing.
How to do that lovingly with grace and help people to see where their gifts are and where they can fit in, all that kind of stuff. Well, in our last couple minutes here, it's been awesome to connect with you, Tia. And you brought up at the beginning, people are there. How do you know they're receiving well what we're inviting them to do? Like, how does a worship leader know when they're succeeding? And back to this analogy, like, if you pull up to a famous tourist spot, or even a non-famous one that's really magnificent, you could tell because people start taking out their phones and start taking pictures and talk about it and stand there and ooh and ah and all that. Right. But what are the ways that we know that we're being effective in helping to lead people? And that's part of what you were saying is like the struggle. The struggle.
I think that's hard. I think that's the hardest part, I think, right now for me. There's like telltale signs, like, are they singing along? You know, are they like stiff as a board with their arms crossed, or are they looking a little more relaxed, or you know, just at peace in the moment? You know, are they raising their arms? Are they kneeling? Are they swaying? Are they doing different things? And so I have certain people that they do show me those things. And so it's like, okay, like they're getting it. And then there's other people that are kind of these like question marks where you're like, I don't know if we're connecting, but they come back every week. You know, they're here, they want to connect with you. And I think for me, the thing that I've been learning the most is just really, I'm the tour guide, I'm not the orchestrator. You know, I'm just here to point people in the direction and hold the door open. And I just have to know and just trust that the Lord is working out their hearts the way that he intends to. And I think for me, I don't always love that is the answer, that I might not ever fully know, you know, if we fully connected. Because again, my job is to serve you. I don't need to know your business.
Scripture, that's a great answer. And that's the scripture that I wish I would have looked up. But it's basically Apollos, it's in the New Testament, Apollos watered it, and somebody planted the seed, somebody else watered it. But only God can grow the hearts of people.
Yeah.
So that fits along with that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, well, is there anything else that you are, that you might say to help encourage worship leaders who are listening to this podcast? Like, I don't know. I know that sometimes worship leaders get oohed and awed about how many people are in the church, or what they have, or how many people in their worship team, or anything like that. Yeah. And coming from a church plant, that's not really necessarily. I mean, like, you probably have the fastest growth of anybody if you do percentage over the last 2 years. But what, like, is there anything you could just sort of encourage people with from your perspective, or your current ministry or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're someone that's called to worship, or you find yourself leading worship, like you have a sensitivity, like that's why you're doing it. Like you obviously love music, but you also understand that worship is something so much bigger than yourself. And I think for me, when I walked into ministry, you know, really I was naive, and I thought, okay, I'm going to craft this for all these people. Like, I'm going to make this good ministry. I'm going to have all these people on my team. It's all going to be great. And then the Lord will be worshiped, you know. And I'm realizing that all those things are good, to have a good, you know, team, to have good team chemistry, to have good team, you know, just organization. Like, all that is great and super important. But it really doesn't have anything to do with me. It's the Lord will be worshiped. And he invited me to be a part of that process. And so just to remember why you started it in the first place, because you just want to worship the Lord. And so, like, just remembering, just stay true to that, like stay in your lane. Know that no matter how good you think you've done or how horrible you think you did it, like, if you came with the right heart, which I'm assuming you did, because you decided one day you wanted to be a worship leader, you know, the Lord is worshiped.
Yeah.
End of story. So
that is really good. All right. Well, it's been awesome to talk with you and meet with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So thankful to connect with you in person. And Elizabeth, I'm so thankful you get to listen into this process of podcasting.
Yep.
And glad you're here. And unbeknownst to other people, you've already edited podcasts and done some things with this, but you just haven't been, you know, the voice yet. And so it's cool to have you here. To everybody else who is listening, we're so thankful to have you on the journey with us. And if you would take a minute, as we always invite people to do, to share and to rate and to subscribe and all the other little things that help grow a podcast. But even more than that, we're just praying for you as you continue to lift up the name of the Lord and serve in your ministry. And if we can be helpful in any way, please let us know. Thanks.
Hey, this is Ava Andrews, and I lead worship with Harvest Ministry. We would love to invite you to listen to some of our music on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, or wherever you like to listen. Over the years, Harvest has recorded worship music, kids worship, instrumental, and more. You can find all the various albums at harvestministryteams.com/music. Thanks.